Why could life be so unfair? Was this the price the main character had to pay for his own power? But he had something that could change his whole life. It could save him. Because it was the Grail, a thing that could grant any wish. So he made a wish. Because the boy never wanted to be ever again. He was blinded by the light the Grail was emitting. Soon, his wish would come true. He was an ordinary guy who worked a regular job. Like all losers, he had a very nasty boss who paid a small salary. However, that evening, he truly felt unwell, and the man let him go. The main character was going to head home, and the people who worked with him noticed that something was wrong with him. But when the boss heard them talking about him behind his back, he got angry. He was ready to fire anyone who allowed themselves to do that, because everyone who worked at the company knew what the main character had gone through. Besides, lately the director had been very kind to Kim because he sympathized with him. On the way home, Kim stopped by a flower shop because that day was his wife's birthday. He also bought groceries to cook dinner. After that, he headed to his own house, but no one greeted him. He felt lonely in his own home. Kim started cooking dinner, and after a while, he set the table for a celebration. It was the first time he tried to cook something the way his wife used to. It hurt that he couldn't be by her side. After taking a shower, the guy continued working. Kim was tired after a hard day at work, but he couldn't fall asleep. Lately, he couldn't sleep properly at all, so he decided to work a little. The notebook was his diary, and only to it could he tell his biggest secrets. Celebrating his wife's birthday together was their tradition, because every time he came home early and cooked seaweed soup, which she loved so much. He desperately wanted to hear her voice again, but it was impossible. He could never cook the way she did. And for their child, he bought a toy. His daughter wasn't there with him either. It was hard for him to write about it, but he tried to stay strong. Kim remembered all the happy moments they had spent together. The main character desperately wanted to see them, even if only for a few minutes, because everything happened so suddenly. And he didn't even have time to do anything to try to save them. He missed them terribly. And because of that, he couldn't hold it in and began to cry. His tears dripped onto the pages of the notebook. He felt terrible. He sat like that until the morning of the next day. Because of the tears, the pages in the notebook were very dirty. Then suddenly, something happened that he didn't expect to see. A bright light began to shine from the notebook. It lit up the whole room and his face. What was it? Strange things started happening to him, because all the entries in his diary disappeared. A blank notebook lay in front of him, and in panic, he tried to find at least something, but it was all pointless. However, on one of the pages he saw only a single word. But how could it have appeared there? Was someone trying to send him a message? Again. He could meet them again. Kim had a chance to see his wife and daughter. The notebook told him so. The next day, he also wanted to leave work early. But the director knew that the day before had been his wife's birthday, so he let him go again. The man tried to cheer him up because he understood how hard it must have been. That day, he canceled the team dinner again because he really wanted the main character to be there and was waiting for him to feel better. After returning home, the man tried to figure out where his notes had gone, because he had kept the diary for more than half a year, and he was very upset that everything had simply vanished. Besides, starting from the first page, it began filling with new notes right before his eyes, and everything written in his diary became real in real life. But the most important thing was that he could meet his family again. And if that became true, he would have to go to another world to do it, because that was exactly what was written in his diary. And it was supposed to happen that very evening at 10 o'clock. Kim started panicking when he realized there was very little time left. He literally had only a few minutes to get ready. And the less time he had, the more nervous he became. Because what would be waiting for him there? In another world. Suddenly, the clock struck 10. Immediately, strange things started happening to him. Because he began traveling through time and felt that soon he would end up in a new world. In the end, it happened. And when he opened his eyes, he realized he was in a place unknown to him. Besides, he didn't remember what had happened to him and tried to recall everything, because he was in a forest, and nearby there were many other people who had ended up there the same way he had. Kim realized that everything written in his diary was true, but this was only the first trip to another world. Everything was just beginning. From that place, their training was supposed to begin, but the guy already knew what would happen next and was ready for anything. First, people had to imagine the weapon they wanted. Also, people weren't allowed to use firearms, and those who thought of them were given a bow and arrows. Meanwhile, the second part of the trial began, because waves of zombies started attacking the people. None of the people could move when they saw these monsters in front of them, but the main character knew he had to fight, because he had nothing to lose. The world he lived in was destroyed after the death of his family. The battle began. Kim fought so that he could have a chance to be with his loved ones. To stop a zombie, you had to cut off its head. Also, for every kill, he gained experience points and achievements, and he felt that with each new achievement, he was becoming stronger. So he began killing them with even greater fury. His physical strength was increasing as well, and he watched other people die to zombies because they couldn't cut off their heads with a bow. However, he wasn't going to help anyone. He was thinking only about his own rank. And again, he rushed forward into a new wave of the dead that was moving toward him. He had to become stronger. And when it was all over, he gained hundreds of experience points and many achievements. But he felt extremely tired. Besides, information started appearing directly in his head because his intelligence level had been increased too. The game was the foundation of that world, and right after the trial ended, a ranking table appeared before the people, and he saw that the other people were also trying to fight to raise their rank. From his diary, he knew that the most important thing was to level up magic, but right then, he needed strength and agility. After the trial, 198 people were left alive, but only the top 100 would advance, and all the others were simply supposed to die. At that moment, Kim realized that only he knew what would happen next, because he was the only one who had received the diary. There were two ways to gain skill points. The first was killing monsters. The second option was killing other people. For that, you could take half of their points. At that very moment, the second stage of training began. People started fighting each other, and the hero realized he didn't have to kill monsters at all, because he could gain far more points. Real panic broke out among the people. No one wanted to die, but those who were weaker were doomed. And when people saw the main character and that he had the most strength and points, they became terrified for their lives because none of them could compete with him. Kim tried to unite the people and wanted to stop them from fighting each other, because they could unite and keep killing monsters together. Besides, he knew they would need many more people later, and he couldn't let everyone die now. But another wave of zombies was approaching, and he left to keep fighting and survive in the cruel world. Suddenly, he heard a woman's voice. Turning around, he saw a woman he recognized. It was Young Yu, and she wanted to go with him because she couldn't protect herself alone. She also believed she could help him, but the hero refused, because to him, she would only be dead weight and get in the way. Besides, she couldn't defend herself at all, because she had never killed anyone. She only hid and watched others kill to survive, and he left, leaving her alone. The main character had only wasted his time talking to her. From his diary, he knew a cave had been found very nearby. The path through the cave led to the mountains, and it was so narrow that only one person could pass. After some time, Kim managed to find the entrance to the cave. He also knew there were many monsters inside, so he prepared himself. Besides, the monsters were strong, and it was very dangerous there. But the people who managed to survive in the cave would become stronger than everyone else, because it would bring many points and power. There was a lot of space inside the cave, when suddenly he heard a strange sound. He managed to defeat the monster that attacked him and cut it in half. Kim knew this would draw the attention of even more creatures, so he couldn't relax. For killing a monster in the cave, he got 10 whole points, while zombies gave only 1. He also knew that at the end of the training, the reward would depend on the number of points and his level. Kim wanted to explore the entire cave and kill all the monsters inside. He was scared, but he wasn't going to stop. So he went into a dark, narrow passage where there were many vicious, ugly creatures. He constantly felt his body getting used to battle, and that he was becoming much stronger. He also found some moss, and he knew that at that very moment, giant ants were supposed to appear, very strong ones. They were dangerous because they always moved in groups. And suddenly they appeared. There were a lot of them. And when they noticed the main character, they started attacking. Their attention was drawn to the bread Kim had. Realizing this, he threw it to the ants, which distracted some of them. The others that remained, he began to kill. For killing an ant, he received 8 points. But it was easy, because they didn't resist and weren't as tough as the worms. They had no armor at all, so Kim could deal with them very easily. After a while, there were very few ants left, because all the others were dead, and he kept fighting without stopping. The last ants left were the strongest, and it was hard to deal with them, but even that didn't help them survive, because in the end, all the creatures were destroyed. When it was over, he gained a huge number of achievements and an ant's hide. It was a special skill he could learn. He was extremely happy because he knew getting a skill during training was practically impossible. Thanks to it, he was able to increase his stats by a full 5, and the more he had, the better he could master skills. If the diary was to be believed, other people were supposed to come to the cave the next day. But when he tried to turn the page to see who it would be, he still wasn't able to do it. Kim tried to remember everything and understand who could be sending him information through the diary. And he was very curious what would be on the next page he couldn't turn. Besides, it mentioned the Grail. But what could that mean? Meanwhile, the leaderboard updated and the main character was in first place. The man in second place got very angry when he realized it. because he had started killing people and was very strong. But even that didn't help him. Many people knew the main character, because they had seen that he was the one who rushed forward at the very beginning and separated from everyone else. The man understood who she was talking about, because he had seen with his own eyes how he split away from them. Meanwhile, Kim didn't stay still. He kept killing monsters. Also, the girl said that she knew where he had gone. However, she didn't want to tell them just like that. In exchange for the information, Young Yu demanded the life of a poor boy. And then the big guy agreed. But he also had certain conditions that she had to fulfill. She understood what he was hinting at. When suddenly she grabbed a sword. She had been walking toward this goal for a long time and wanted to seize the moment to kill him and take half of his points in power. Kim didn't stop. His level was so high that the ants were no longer a serious threat to him, because he had slaughtered hundreds of them. When the fight ended, he checked his list of achievements and points. His strength and endurance were at a very high level. Less than 2 days into the trial, and he had already pulled far ahead of everyone else. But his mana was too low. He wasn't going to stop and tried to find a more serious opponent for himself. And he did. After some time, he found the Ant Queen, a real boss. But when he saw her, he realized he had made a huge mistake. Because she was gigantic, several times larger than the other ants. He tried to hide, because he understood he couldn't win in an open fight. Besides, there were many ordinary ants near her, guarding her. He thought that by killing ants, he could prepare better for the battle with her. However, he couldn't let her go, and he decided to try defeating her the next day. He had already begun to doubt himself, when suddenly, a ranking table appeared in front of him. Because he was the leader, his strength and all his stats increased and reached a new level. His stats rose by 8 points. He also had enough bread for bait, so he decided to try. First, he tried to distract the smaller ants from the queen and lure them with bread, and he began killing them one by one. This let him boost his strength even more before the duel with the boss. However, there were too many ants, and after non-stop fighting, he got very tired. Besides, he understood that he had enraged the queen, but he noticed she didn't attack. Instead, a new wave of ants was approaching him, and with his last strength, he began to fight them off. Also, a new type of fly started attacking him, and they were very hard to fight. But he was close, and he wasn't going to retreat. He was confident his strength would be enough for hundreds of enemies. With every new kill, he gained experience points and became stronger. But at the same time, he grew more and more exhausted. Soon his stats would rise, and he would feel relief. But he couldn't stop, because the enemies were closing in and even began to attack him. He fought back. A skill he gained during the battle saved him from an insect bite. He had to fight to obtain a new D-rank skill for defeating the Ant Queen, so he charged at her. This was going to be the decisive battle, because he was sure he had enough strength. After killing all the ants, he realized that he was left alone with her, one-on-one. And this moment was decisive for both of them. The queen prepared to attack, but he was ready and wasn't going to run. He gripped his sword and prepared himself. He was scared, but he believed he had enough power. When suddenly, an Uter, he had been waiting for this moment, and when it came, Kim managed to kill her with one precise move. Meanwhile, other people managed to find the cave and had already arrived. The villain tried to find the boy to kill him and steal his power. He knew kills in the cave gave more points than zombies, but he was focused on killing people. The man wanted to catch and kill the main character, but he understood he had no chance in an open fight. Still, he knew the main character was tired, so he wanted to use that, because if he caught him, he would take first place in the ranking by points. When he killed the boss, he received a huge amount of points and experience. And at last, he managed to learn another skill. Now a powerful shell formed on his skin that was meant to protect him. And in dangerous situations, it could save his life. This could truly be considered an achievement, because he immediately had an advantage over everyone else. But that wasn't all. As a gift, he was supposed to receive items. Points were the foundation. Thanks to them, you could obtain real superpowers. Skills were something you could control. And lastly came items, which could raise stats and help you learn new skills. Thanks to items, you could gain unbelievable power. That's why they were the most valuable of everything he could find. At that very moment, he found a chest. Kim managed to gain a bunch of different skills and points, and he wanted to test how they worked. The first thing he found was very strange, because it didn't look like ordinary magic. The main character was satisfied and didn't regret risking his life and defeating the boss. Meanwhile, people moved forward, and by the number of corpses, they understood they were almost there. Suddenly, the Zli man stopped. Next, he wanted to go alone to check what was ahead. There he saw what shocked him the most since arriving in this world. Because right in front of him lay the dead body of the Ant Queen, and he became frightened. Because at that moment, he met the main character's gaze for the first time. It became very quiet, and no one dared to speak first. But Kim couldn't understand why people came to the cave, because the diary said they would arrive much later. Had they all come for him? But when the boy saw Young Yu, he understood everything. She was the one who made it possible to find him. The future in the diary changed because he did things his own way, not the way it was written there. The villain began to get angry. He couldn't believe Kim could have killed all the corpses by himself. And besides, he didn't look tired at all. Everything was completely different from what he expected. Killing him wouldn't be so easy. He also knew the main character's stats were higher than all of theirs combined, and even all together they wouldn't be able to win. At that moment, the main character approached him and ordered him to retreat. The bandit got scared and, having no choice, stepped back. He simply let the main character go further, because he had no chance against him. Kim was no longer an ordinary human, and then he realized he needed to kill monsters in order to increase his own stats. Still, he promised to catch him another time. Meanwhile, people continued killing each other. In the pursuit of points, they were so cruel that they were ready to kill each other with their bare hands. A real massacre was happening between them. The weaker ones were doomed because they couldn't protect themselves. Suddenly, time ran out, and out of the 148 people still alive, only 100 were allowed to move on. In panic, they began begging to be chosen, but most of them were doomed. After a while, a hail of arrows fell from the sky. All the people who were outside died. Those who managed to survive ended up in a new place. Altogether, they were locked in a cramped cell, and they didn't understand where they were or what was happening. Few of them knew each other, and the main hero was glad that the villain and his gang weren't nearby. At that moment, the third stage of training was supposed to begin. 3 doors appeared in front of the people. Only 10 people could enter the red one, 5 could enter the blue one, and only 1 could enter the white one. Each of them had to make their own choice and move on to the next level of training behind the door. The red door was the hardest, and there were no guarantees that the people who went there would survive. The blue door was a bit easier, but what did the white door mean? As soon as someone entered the white door, their training would end at that very moment. Suddenly, one of the men ran forward. He wanted to be the first to enter the white door. The others tried to catch him, but the door wouldn't open. The order of choosing doors depended on each participant's number of points, and everyone had to choose in turn. So the main hero had to choose first. But for him, the choice was obvious. He immediately chose the red door. This surprised the others, because they thought he would choose the white door to end his trial. Also, many wanted to go with him because they thought he could protect them, and that they could all survive if they went with him. Next was the guy in third place, and unexpectedly for everyone, he chose the white door. Immediately, people in the crowd started shouting at him for that choice, because he had no guarantee he could stay alive if he chose the red door after the main hero, and he wanted to survive the trial and didn't want to give up such a chance. Other people also started choosing, and some chose the blue door. They were afraid to go through the red one because they didn't know what awaited them there. The decision was very difficult because a lot depended on the team that chose the same door, but the main hero didn't pay attention to the others' choices. He believed he had chosen correctly and wanted to complete the trial to the very end. He had a conflict with the man who chose the white door, but when everyone had chosen, the doors opened. One of the people in last place was very scared. As soon as he saw the white door open, he decided to force his way inside and win the right to live. He started running, but when he tried to enter, an invisible barrier stopped him. The others were angry at him for what he did, and they wanted to punish him. But Kim stepped in. He stopped the man who wanted to take revenge on the insolent guy for trying to enter his door. He was also very angry at the main hero, but he understood he had no chance against him. Besides, there was very little time left. Within a few minutes, the doors would close forever. Everyone who didn't manage to enter would die. Still, he went through the white door and disappeared, because the door closed behind him immediately, and it was unclear what awaited him ahead. The hero and his team were left on their own and were also about to enter their door, and the man who had been beaten remained lying on the ground. He didn't want to risk it, and he was very scared, so he decided to stay. All the doors closed. The poor man didn't get up, but he didn't even know what awaited him next. Then suddenly he understood everything, because when he felt scorching heat, he saw that the room was burning, and everyone who stayed outside was doomed to burn alive. It was the end. Meanwhile, the people who entered the doors ended up on a new level. The main hero and his team found themselves in some strange village. After walking around it, he realized there were no people there. It also seemed abandoned. His teammates joined him, those who had decided to follow him. The guy wanted to introduce himself to them. The girl's name was Kim Yun Ki, and the other guy was Yu Jung-gyu. However, his clothes were covered in blood. It became clear that he could kill people to gain more experience and points. because the blood on his clothes didn't look like monster blood. He immediately felt ashamed. Because he did it to stay alive and not die. And because of that, he didn't consider himself a coward. They were about to be told the rules of training on the 3rd level. It was supposed to last 10 days. People listened carefully to the rules so they would know what they had to do. Twice a day, monsters were supposed to come to the village, and they had to defend the village from them. Also, inside the village there was a stone they had to protect at the cost of their own lives. Because if it was destroyed, they would die as well. People who tried to leave the settlement would be automatically moved back inside to protect the stone. Because outside the village it was safe, and monsters didn't touch people. The hero understood he shouldn't count on their support, and most likely he would have to do everything himself. First, he wanted to go to the center of the settlement to see the stone they needed to protect. At that moment, he understood that defending the village alone would be a very difficult task. The attack would start soon, so they couldn't waste time. He immediately asked the people if they would fight. But even though they were very scared, they decided to stay. 10 people were supposed to do it, but there were only 3 of them. But the hero believed there had to be far more people in the settlement, and all of them were outside it. Safe. So when the attack began, they would all be moved to the stone and would help defend it. And if one person went, all the others would follow. So they had to stick together and protect one another, because they were a team. Besides, those who ran away would sooner or later be returned to the settlement to defend the stone. So there was no point in fleeing, because their lives depended on the statue they had to protect. At that moment, the hero realized that having so few people might actually be an advantage, because no one would dare to leave. Meanwhile, they managed to reach the center of the village, where they saw the very statue they had to defend. Killing monsters on the 3rd level gave much more points. Besides, they could raise their stats and become stronger each time. And at a later stage, they would have an advantage over those who chose other doors, because the people who made it through the red door were much stronger than everyone else. However, Kim Yoon-ki was angry at the hero, because to him it was just a game. Suddenly, she fell silent, because the monster attack was about to begin. Suddenly, the first one appeared. They were ugly goblins. They had weapons, and there were a lot of them. The hero wanted to run forward, while the others had to stay by the stone and defend it at the cost of their lives. He didn't have time to explain anything and had already rushed forward, and he began killing the monsters one by one. Kim realized they weren't very strong, but there were far too many of them. Yun Jae panicked because he saw that even the main hero couldn't handle them, because at that moment, one of the monsters lunged at him. That terrified him, and he realized that right then, his team's life depended on him. So he gathered his strength and started defending himself. More and more monsters attacked him. The hero understood they might not be able to handle them, but at that very moment, when he got distracted, he was almost killed. At the last second, he managed to dodge and survived only by sheer luck, and he kept fighting. Suddenly, one of the monsters appeared behind him. He knew he wouldn't have time to dodge, so he used the ability he got after killing the boss. A hard shell appeared on his skin, and the monster that tried to strike him didn't understand what happened. Its sword broke, and in that moment, it was left without a weapon. Kim killed it with one precise move. However, a new problem appeared. His friends couldn't handle the monsters, so he had to go help them, especially since the girl had been injured. And so their defense wouldn't collapse. He returned back. Then he realized it would be much harder than he had imagined. When everything ended, they sat wounded by the sacred stone. The guy was all right. At the same time, the girl had a serious wound. Blood was running from her shoulder, and the wound was very deep. Yun Jae wanted to help her and bandage the wound. The main hero understood that if the situation got worse, he would have to fight alone. They needed to recover their strength and eat, because a new attack would happen soon. It was already dark, and the people had been resting the whole time and preparing for a new fight. Suddenly, Yun Jae approached the main hero and thanked him. He was grateful that the guy had helped him and hadn't let the monsters kill them, and he decided to thank him in that way. But it seemed that wasn't all. He would start speaking but then fall silent right away. Kim realized he wanted something from him. As it turned out, Yun Jae just couldn't forget his words. He was very ashamed that he had killed people, but he had no other choice. He had only defended himself because they were the ones trying to kill him. And because of that, he felt bad, because he felt guilty. Then he started crying, because he didn't want to die, and if he hadn't taken that step, he would be dead now. The main hero tried to calm him down and thought he had been too harsh with him, but he kept crying. Then suddenly, he noticed there was no one else around. It was just the two of them, and it wasn't clear where the girl had gone. They searched the whole area around them, but she was nowhere to be found. Could she really have run away? Most likely, she was afraid for her own life and of the next duel, where she could simply die. But the two of them couldn't handle it alone, because it was incredibly hard to do. Even her smallest support could have helped them a lot. There was hope that the number of monsters would also decrease. However, the situation was very difficult, and they had to prepare for the worst. The main hero believed they had to think optimistically. Besides, he was counting on Yu Jung-yu's support because he couldn't protect the talisman alone. But Yu Jung-yu wasn't going to run away. He was curious what would happen to them if the stone was destroyed. But most likely, that would be the end of their training, and they would die. Yu Jung-yu had to take on 10 monsters. The main hero would have to deal with all the rest. It was hard, because their levels weren't the same. But Yu Jung-yu's task was simply to stall for time while Kim destroyed them. Soon, the fight was about to begin. It started. There were no fewer monsters. They held up much better than he had thought. The hero activated his ability again, and it saved him from death. Besides that, he fought back and destroyed enemies by the dozens. Moreover, his strength kept increasing, and he felt much better than in the first duel. For killing one monster, he received 18 experience points. But he could see how hard it was for Yu Jung-yu. They began surrounding him, so the hero needed to help. He knocked one of them out with a stone. It wasn't clear how long he would be able to hold out like that. But he was also gaining strength and experience points, which helped him a lot. Compared to back in the cave, his points had increased greatly, and he was happy that he had chosen such a difficult level. After a while, they managed to defeat all the monsters. Soon, they were also supposed to receive food and other supplies. From the diary, he knew that training behind the red door lasted the longest, and just for completing it successfully, you could earn many more points. Besides, he was supposed to receive a reward and gain some skill. Suddenly, Yu Jung-yu got it. It was called Devil's Deal, plus class, and if activated, strength and agility would increase by 5 points. He got the skill even though he had killed very few creatures. The hero was jealous of him because he had killed 98 and hadn't gotten anything like that. Meanwhile, the girl continued hiding outside the village. She sat there for several days and was glad she had decided to run away. She was afraid because she knew she wouldn't have been able to handle the monsters. Besides, she understood that they were doing well if they could hold out for so long. And she didn't want them to be killed, because her own life depended on them, so she wasn't going to come back and help them. Meanwhile, it was the 4th day of their struggle. With each day it became harder, and Yu Jung-yu grew very tired. They had already fought living trees, orcs, and rats. What would come next? Besides, he had an injury. The main hero wanted to help him, and to stop the bleeding, he pressed on the wound. Then he began bandaging it. Yu Jung-yu doubted he could last until the very end because he felt his strength shrinking with each day. And this was only the 3rd stage. There was still the whole training ahead. But Kim tried not to think about it. He wanted to finish everything and simply keep living. Besides, his partner had no right to die because then the main hero's life would also be doomed. He also had younger brothers whom he didn't want to leave without support. They were probably crying because he hadn't been around for so long. It was especially hard for him. He started crying again. He was very scared. And then the main hero remembered his wife and daughter. And he remembered why he had really taken part in the trial, because it was the only hope to meet them again. He also couldn't allow his partner to be killed, and he decided to protect him and the stone at the cost of his own life, because they only had a few days left, and then the training would be over. They would become much stronger, and after that, things would be much easier. They needed to rest because another battle would happen very soon. He remembered the birth of his daughter. He remembered how she rolled over for the first time. Together with his wife, they were the happiest parents in the world. And they were glad they had such a beautiful child. They also loved each other, and they cherished every day they spent together. Suddenly, the baby started crying. It seemed she wanted to eat. The main hero loved her more than anything in the world. He tried to spend as much time with her as possible. Besides, she looked like his wife, and because of that, they constantly competed over her, because each of them wanted their daughter to look like them. Yu Jung-yu noticed that he had become very sad. They managed to survive 9 days, and the last one arrived. The monsters didn't appear all day, but then suddenly they heard a strange sound. A danger notification appeared in front of them. Right now, they had to fight the 3rd level boss. It was a gigantic, furious bull, and along with it an army of skeletons appeared. They couldn't hesitate or let them get too close, so they had to attack first. The main hero was going to take the boss on himself. The battle was about to begin, and everything depended only on him. But he didn't stop. And he rushed straight at the bull. Blow after blow, he tried to wound it. But the beast was very strong and could resist. At the same time, Yu Jung-yu also prepared to defend, because in front of him was an army of armored skeletons. Before the fight, his strength and endurance increased by a few points, and he believed he could help. Meanwhile, the fight between the main hero and the boss continued. The beast had thick skin, but he managed to cut it. But even after that, the bull kept resisting. It seemed the bull was about to throw him off. And that's why it started smashing the buildings in the village. Everything was buried under rubble. However, the hero managed to survive. He was lucky. He managed to jump off its back at the very last moment. But it wasn't over yet, because the beast was still alive and prepared to attack again. Suddenly, he realized the wound on its body had gotten smaller, and he watched it regenerate. The beast was back at its original condition. The hero couldn't even imagine it would be this hard. Meanwhile, Kim Yun-ki was hiding in one of the houses. She couldn't understand what was happening in the village. And meanwhile, the fight between the main hero and the boss continued. Yu Jung-gyu continued fighting the skeletons. The girl who was only watching couldn't understand how they had become so strong. She was afraid to return to them because she thought they would want revenge for her running away. She was sure they wouldn't forgive her and would want to take revenge. What was she supposed to do? Was the bull really immortal? Because despite the huge number of blows the main hero dealt, the boss remained unharmed. Suddenly, it struck the hero with its tail. But Kim dodged again. In return, he delivered a strike and cut off the tip of its tail. But would it really be able to regrow the lost body part again? And suddenly, it began to happen. Its tail started growing back quickly. Did it really have endless regeneration? And did it not drain its strength at all? His opponent was truly very dangerous. So the only thing left was to keep fighting in order to protect the stone. However, this time the monster was going to counterattack, and he met it with its own horns. That didn't stop the boy, and he struck again, trying to break its skull. But all his efforts were useless. Yet he noticed a crack had appeared in its head, and inside it he saw a bright light. Could that be its weak spot? Suddenly, an explosion rang out. But Yu Jung-gyu managed to shield the hero with his own body and stop the flames. When Kim realized what had happened, he started screaming, and he saw that his partner was injured. As it turned out, among the army of skeletons there were mages, and they began attacking them. And at that very moment, when he was about to help Yu Jung-gyu, he was struck by the bull's tail. The Uter was so strong that he was thrown several meters away. However, this still wasn't the end, because the bull kept chasing him. The only way to protect himself was to use his superpower, and that's what the hero did. But despite that, it was very hard and painful for him, because using it consumed a lot of points and mana. He ended up trapped, pinned from both sides. The bull wouldn't let him go, and that way the main hero could simply suffocate. He was lucky he had gotten exactly the skill that could save his life. And at that very moment, he used it, and managed to escape the deadly trap. Reaching the stone on its head, he delivered a udar, and it began to crack. When the crystal was shattered, all the skeletons attacking them fell apart. Was this really a victory? And suddenly, a message appeared on the screen in front of them saying the boss was dead, and its entire army had also died. The attack was stopped. At that same moment, the girl left her hiding place, and Yu Jung-gyu tried to find the hero, who had ended up buried under the boss's bones. Had he died? But suddenly, Yu Jung-gyu heard his voice. He had already started crying, but he was overjoyed when he realized his partner was alive. It was all over. He tried to come closer to help him get out from under the debris. Then he stopped. He was crying because he couldn't believe it was over, and they were the winners. And then the worst happened. Yu Jung-gyu's face was full of pain. The main hero understood what had happened, because right behind him was the girl who had fled the village after the first attack. She had come back. The girl stabbed him with her own sword. The wound was very severe, because the sword went straight through him. Kim realized he had big problems, because he had lost his companion and couldn't help him. But when Kim Yun-ki realized what she had done, she got terrified. Why did she do it? She was convinced they wanted to kill her, and she was trying to protect herself, because she just wanted to survive, and she wasn't going to die in a place like that. After killing the guy, she was going to do the same to the main hero, because she could take their experience points and become the strongest in the trial. And at that moment, she saw that the boy was stuck in the boss's bones and couldn't get out. So she rushed at him too, trying to land a Smrtelny blow. Then she realized she had made a mistake, because she felt terrible pain and saw blood on her own face. The main hero managed to cut off her arm, because he wasn't near death, and he still had plenty of strength after the victory. He had just received a huge amount of experience and points for killing the boss, and he was able to restore his strength and heal his wounds. The girl had made a horrible mistake, and he had no choice left, so he was going to kill her. It was over. He was the only one who managed to survive the harsh trial and move on. But he wasn't going to leave his companion, so he walked up to him. He was still alive, and the hero didn't want to let him die, so he had a special item. During the battles in the cave, he had obtained a potion that could heal wounds, and he poured it onto his injuries. Immediately, his wounds began to heal. He felt that it was getting easier, because a low-level elixir could save a person once. He could have used it in a dangerous situation, but he decided to give it to his companion to save his life. And he didn't regret it at all, because during the trials, he had become his friend. But Yu Jung-gyu felt hot and didn't understand what was happening to him. After a while, his wound healed completely, and that saved his life. The main hero felt sorry to spend the potion, because he wanted to keep it for himself. But he remembered how scared his companion had been, and how much unbelievable effort he had made to help him. He was even ready to give up his life for him, because he had shielded him in a critical moment. He fought beside him and never ran away even once, so he believed it was the right decision. Yun Jae started crying again and threw himself into his rescuer's arms. It moved him so deeply that the hero himself even started crying. He had a very strange feeling. But Kim assured him that it would pass soon, because he had just started feeling unwell. And he really did feel awful. His head hurt terribly, and he was very tired. But a new notification appeared in front of them. From that moment, their stage of training was over. Soon they had to move to a new level and receive additional items and skills. They also had a chance to receive an extra reward. The main hero received a lot of experience points and increased his stats. And because of that, he was able to become the strongest again. He also received exclusive items, and strange armor appeared on his hands. He wanted to test how it worked and what its true purpose was. But for a long time, he couldn't figure it out. They could also move to the next training location by passing through the doors that appeared in front of them. Now, this was definitely the end, and they had to move on. The men didn't want to waste time, so they went to the doors that appeared before them. They ended up in the same place where everything had started. It was also where the other people returned, and that same guy who had chosen the white door. For him, time had stopped, and it seemed like he hadn't even entered the door. The thing was, the fourth stage started for everyone at the same time, no matter which doors they chose. And while they had been fighting for 10 days and growing stronger, time had been frozen for the others. People who didn't choose a harder level and couldn't gain more experience could only regret their choice. But not everyone managed to pass the trial. Many people died. Suddenly, he saw his evil enemy, the same guy who had tried to take his life at any cost. But had only the two of them survived? Their clothes were covered in blood, and it seemed they had simply killed their comrades and taken their experience. At that very moment, when all the people were in one place, they were supposed to announce the rules of the fourth stage. From then on, all players had to unite into groups, and a confrontation between teams would begin. The camp that could kill more monsters would earn more team points, and the group that won would be able to move on. And for those who lost, there would be no next stage. Team points were awarded if they killed monsters behind the white doors. Black doors could grant individual points and personal stats. Besides, every night at the same time, people would have the chance to receive various items. And even if the team lost, the 10 players with the highest individual points would be able to move on. Most players saw no point in going through the white doors, because they were already at the top of the rankings. But then suddenly everyone witnessed that the main hero and Yun Jae were the first to go to the white doors. But no one could understand why they made that choice. After some time, they ended up in a new place. Everything around them was covered in vegetation and grass. The monsters there were very strong, and most players couldn't handle them. Besides, there were too many of them, and they always moved in groups. Suddenly, a group of monsters chasing a man was Yun Jae. He didn't understand what had happened. But when he saw it, he was overjoyed, because the main hero and Yun Jae were killing them, and it wasn't hard for them. The man was stunned. How could they be so strong? And then he realized he had made a huge mistake when he chose the white door, because he didn't get any experience from it, and now he was too weak to fight. And the guys were happy when they saw him in such a terrible condition. Besides, the bracelet he had received as a gift was pretty good and helped him a lot, because it was simply an incredible item. Because it reduced stamina consumption by 20%, and now using skills was much easier. Also, when he used it, his strength increased too. They simply wiped out every monster that appeared before them, even the strongest ones. Because they had so much strength, they dealt with them easily. The first day of the fourth training stage came to an end. When the team results were counted, it became clear that the main hero was in first place again. On top of that, he had an enormous lead over everyone else. But it seemed that Kim Do-hyung, his biggest rival, was also heading into the dark depths of the forest. It also became clear that no one except them was earning team points. Besides, they had so many points that everyone else was shocked when they found out. The main hero also received a reward for surviving the day. Coins that could be exchanged for rewards after the training ended. He knew that, according to the diary, items bought with those coins were very valuable, so he wanted to save them and planned to use them at the very last moment. On top of that, he tried to negotiate with the other people, and when he spoke in front of them, they all got scared, because they knew he was the strongest. The main hero had a way for all of them to stay alive. Kim Do-hyung overheard their conversation. He criticized the hero for what he wanted to do, because he couldn't believe that everyone would survive. The main hero's behavior also made him furious. And at that moment, he started shouting, Everyone began watching what was about to happen next, but Kim Do-hyung was afraid. He understood he was weaker and didn't dare to challenge him. Kim Do-hyung was against it. He didn't want everyone to unite into one team and work together so that everyone could survive. He believed he could survive if he just collected individual points. But it was the final stage, and no one knew what would happen there. Maybe they would need to combine their strength again. And that was a good chance to prove himself. He wanted everyone to first unite their efforts and earn team points. And after that, each person could decide what to do. He also believed that 1,000 points a day would be enough to hold out. Personally, he planned to earn twice as many points since he was the initiator. It seemed everyone agreed to his conditions. And Kim Do-hyung realized that everyone had taken the main hero's side. And because he had no support, he got extremely angry. Suddenly, he attacked the main hero. But the hero didn't want to argue with him because he believed it would only divide them even more. Besides, the man couldn't believe his words without a single proof. It seemed they would never manage to unite. Still, they couldn't waste time, and the main hero wanted to go hunting again. But he understood that people had to gather together and help each other. And he did it exactly because that's what was written in his diary. But did he really need to save everyone? Besides, after this stage, the team that gained more points could receive a prize. So, without even resting, he headed to the white doors to keep grinding team points. A fight started immediately, because in front of him stood a giant monster ready to crush him. The main hero's bracelet helped him and made his strikes much stronger. So he dealt with it easily, and the beast was dead. Besides, for killing it, he gained a lot of points and experience. But he realized that with one sword strike using the bracelet, he lost half of his stamina. So he needed to conserve his strength and treat this much more carefully. After everything that happened, Yun Jae looked at himself and the others and wondered which of them was the real monster. Sitting on a tree trunk with an exhausted body, he asked Kim somberly whether they had gone too deep into this dangerous forest. It felt to him like every next step led closer to death. But Kim didn't see it as a threat, only a challenge. For him, risk meant progress. His confidence was unbreakable. These words stirred something in Yun Jae that was more than just surprise. He paused for a moment and gathered his courage to say something important. He began to admit that for Kim, this had davno stopped being just a fight for survival. Kim silently continued the thought. His gaze was fixed on the sky, as if the answer was hidden there. And really, what comes next? Just returning to the old familiar world? Or something more? Yun Jae stood in silence, feeling a wave of emotions rise in his chest. He tried to hold himself back, but everything he had bottled up was bursting out. Kim only watched him without saying a word, and understanding could be read in his eyes. Suddenly, Yun Jae couldn't take it anymore. He rushed to Kim and hugged him tightly. The gesture was so sincere that Kim couldn't hold back. Tears appeared in his eyes. In that moment, he realized how important this friendship had become to him. And though pain and fatigue still gripped his body, his heart filled with warmth. But Kim felt that something was wrong. His head grew heavy, his body became sluggish. His condition worsened with every minute, but he tried to hold on. A strange Trevojny voice rose inside him. Something was coming. The forest was filled with tense silence, broken only by the quiet voice of the boy who doubted whether they could win together. His thoughts were sincere, but uncertainty lived in every word. Then their conversation was suddenly interrupted by another voice coming from the darkness. People jumped in surprise. Someone unfamiliar was approaching the camp. It was Kim Do-hyung, the one who always appeared unexpectedly and left disaster behind. Smirking boldly, he insisted he didn't want to fight, though his blood-stained clothes said otherwise. His words sounded calm, but in his eyes there was something ominous, almost predatory. Everyone was on guard. Any move of his could be taken as a challenge. But he answered with fake sincerity. Supposedly, he came with an offer. But no one believed him, because when Kim Do-hyung smiles, there's always something dangerous behind it. Kim Do-hyung smiled as if the whole situation was part of his game. His voice, full of arrogance, only intensified the sense of danger. Meanwhile, the main hero and his companion tried to catch up with the beglets. They raced through the gusty bushes, leaving a bloody trail from their wounds. Ahead, like a shadow, moved an unknown figure, a fast, agile, merciless monster. Its smile was twisted. It seemed to enjoy the chase. But the pursuers were running out of strength. Wounds, losses, fear, everything blended into one endless breath. Yun Jae stopped, breathing hard, barely holding back his emotions. His fist clenched so tightly his nails dug into his skin. Anger overflowed him. He realized they were being led straight into monsters on purpose, to be Yun. And now he had only one goal, to catch that freak, even if it took eternity. It was obvious it could be a trap, so they couldn't risk it. So they decided not to take the risk and turned back. At that moment, doors appeared in front of them. doors they could enter to return. But he couldn't just let the goblin go because he had read about it in his diary, so he swore he would catch it at any cost. They returned, and the second day of the fourth stage ended. The results for each participant and each team began to be counted. Then the hero noticed that 6 people were missing, and it was clear that his opponent, Kim Do-hyung, had already started executing his plan, killing everyone weaker than him. Besides, he managed to gain the support of other people by intimidating them, and he realized that the enemy's team had earned far more points than his. But what really happened? And why did they do it? After all, they had agreed to earn 1,000 points every day. But Kim Do-hyung denied any guilt. He, together with the other people, didn't want to listen because they believed team points weren't that important. And then he accused the guy of refusing to agree with him. It infuriated him that Kim Do-hyung could so easily let other people die. And then he started walking toward him. The atmosphere became extremely tense. It seemed a fight was unavoidable. Kim Do-hyung was furious, and it was hard for him to keep control. Despite that, Kim remained calm. And then he challenged him. His companion stepped closer. Yoo Jung-gyu tried to calm him down, because he understood they couldn't fight against 10 people. Besides, they couldn't force them to obey. At the same time, Yoo Jung-gyu drew his sword and wanted to try to kill the main hero, but his partner stopped him, because they really had broken their promise, and he shouldn't start a slaughter. And he explained that they planned to earn team points on the last day, because individual points mattered much more to them. However, Kim didn't believe a single word he said. He had no choice, so he just left, and his companion ran after him. Yoo Jung-gyu had joined the people only to get rid of the main hero and kill him, because alone he would never be able to defeat him, and everyone knew it. Besides, his ally believed that by the hero's death they wouldn't gain any benefit, because they promised to save everyone and wanted to start a real war. Since the main hero knew how to win people over to his side, that could mean the hero was deliberately avoiding conflict with them, and he was much smarter than they initially thought. All they could do was keep moving upward little by little and continue gaining experience and points, because they didn't have to start with them. There were many others, weaker ones. The main hero truly was going to fight them. He knew sooner or later it would happen, so he wanted to bring it forward as early as possible. But even so, it was too much, even for him. Because he was the one who had been against killing from the very beginning. But there was something else the main hero didn't like. Everything was unfolding exactly as written in his diary, and he knew one team of 6 people would disappear. And it was Kim Do-hyung who took their individual points and experience. It was Park Sang-soo's team, and they were the biggest threat. Kim knew the killings would continue, and if he didn't stop it, he would have no allies left at all. But it was extremely dangerous. So he asked Yoo Jung-gyu whether he was on his side, because now it was dangerous to walk beside the main hero, and maybe they would also have to kill people to survive. Hearing that, Yoo Jung-gyu started shouting. Kim stayed silent. He was very tense at that moment. And then he began to speak, confidently and seriously. A new day began. The main hero and Yoo Jung-gyu tried to catch the goblin that was running away from them, because he knew a very valuable reward could drop from it. Besides, they couldn't catch it just by running after it. So the main hero came up with a new plan. And the goblin didn't stop, it kept running. It was faster. The goblin tried to escape. He ran, but the guy didn't fall behind. He tried to cut down the trees the goblin was jumping on. But nothing worked. The evil dwarf managed to get away and stay unharmed. He also tried to slow the main hero down by throwing dirt at him. It worked. He managed to break away from him. Grabbing onto a tree, he stopped. And he started laughing, mocking Kim. But even that didn't make the guy give up. He wanted to catch him at any cost. Suddenly, Yoo Jung-gyu warned him about danger from the other side, because a huge monster appeared right in front of him. It turned out the evil goblin had figured it out and led them into a trap. But Kim understood this could be a chance to defeat him. He prepared for battle. The monster was extremely strong and easily ripped trees out by the roots. But at that moment, the goblin relaxed, hoping the monster would kill the guy. So he had only one chance, and gathering all his strength, he started attacking. He believed he could win. Yoo Jung-gyu tried to warn him, but the hero wouldn't listen. A new threat appeared. A tree was flying straight at him, and, with a single swing of his sword, he split it into 2 equal parts. After that, he was about to kill the monster. And he succeeded. The path to the goblin was open, and he managed to wound him with his own sword. It seemed everything was over, and his plan had worked, because he caught him exactly at the moment he least expected it. Yoo Jung-gyu was amazed by his strength and agility. How did he handle such strong enemies so easily? He felt ashamed for doubting him. Meanwhile, the day was ending, and the people returning noticed that many hadn't come back. A team decided to take a risk and go to a dangerous place because they were far behind in team points. It was risky, but they had no choice. Even though they were scared, they went. Suddenly, they heard a strange sound, and one of the children felt sharp pain. Something attacked her. It became clear they had been ambushed. It was the enemy team, Park Sang-soo's, and they had gone hunting again. They started killing people who were weaker and couldn't defend themselves. Kim Do-hyung killed them because they had a lot of coins, and a man agreed to give up all the coins he would earn in exchange for his life. But Kim Do-hyung understood that if they survived, everything would become even harder, because then he wouldn't be able to avoid a clash with the main hero. The poor man started screaming, realizing he wouldn't be able to convince Kim Do-hyung not to kill him. Besides, Kim Do-hyung didn't want to wait, so he simply gave the order. After that, his whole team drew their weapons. And soon, a real massacre was about to begin. But why were they so cruel? Were they really that evil? People begged them, but even that didn't help. And everyone trapped there was doomed. Suddenly, Kim Do-hyung stopped. He saw the main hero moving in his direction. That moment became a turning point. The tension was extremely high. But everyone knew that Park Sang-soo's team had been killing everyone else from the very beginning. And they would never stop. They would keep doing it until the end. But the main hero could stop all of this. And Yoo Jung-gyu, who wasn't going to leave him and was on his side. Yoo Jung-gyu wasn't afraid, because he knew that after the goblin's death, they had gotten a very valuable reward. They received armor, potions, and many valuable items. The hero also tried to find a potion, and suddenly he saw it. It was a yellow-colored liquid, and he was going to test how it really worked. Luck was on his side. The liquid was extremely rare and very hard to obtain. Yoo Jung-gyu also started picking different items for himself that he could use to become stronger. But Kim was so happy he got the potion that he let him take everything else. He drank it immediately. After a while, all his strength recovered, and his mana increased by 20%. He could also regenerate faster. He felt a pleasant warmth throughout his body. His wounds healed. There were many other items there as well. The loot was truly valuable. They were lucky. Yoo Jung-gyu wanted to test his new weapon. He swung it and easily split a tree in half. He himself didn't expect he could become strong, because the skill he obtained was very rare and powerful. He couldn't believe they could now be among the strongest participants in the trial. Besides, they had rare weapons and armor. The main hero also managed to gain extra power for his sword. Yoo Jung-gyu realized his companion knew a lot about the world and all the monsters, because he never made mistakes and always made the right choice. It seemed to him that Kim could see the future. He didn't understand how his words affected the main hero, but they still had unfinished business. And at that moment, they had to go hunting. But it wasn't ordinary hunting, and very soon Yoo Jung-gyu realized it. They couldn't run away. They had to fight against a larger number of enemies. Park Sang-soo's team tried to justify themselves, believing that only by killing could you survive in a cruel world. The guy had never been this angry in his life, and in that moment, he was ready to kill him. The helpless people started running, but Kim Do-hyung couldn't allow that and started chasing them. But the hero blocked his path. This was the moment the fight was supposed to happen. Kim Do-hyung mocked him. He didn't believe the hero could hurt him because he had more people. But Kim wasn't afraid at all. On the contrary, he was ready to take the risk. He wanted to do it for the other people who would follow his example. And then he confessed that he had special abilities. His words made Kim Do-hyung nervous. He never imagined the hero could be so strong. And then he ordered his team to attack. But the people were scared. None of them dared to go first. And after a while, some of them simply ran away. Kim Do-hyung attacked and tried to wound the guy. He was extremely nervous and tried to give it everything he had. Kim saw it and stayed calm, because the man wasn't a real opponent for him. At that moment, he was about to use all his abilities to win. Besides, he was stronger than him, and he could easily withstand his pressure. Kim Do-hyung was stunned that the hero could resist him. Suddenly, Kim threw him off, and Kim Do-hyung flew several meters away from him. At that moment, the other members of his team attacked. But the hero was ready, so he killed them easily. Yoo Jung-gyu didn't just stand there either. He helped him. His opponent was the criminal's girlfriend, the girl who had betrayed the main hero. The fight continued, and the enemy team suffered heavy losses. One by one, people died. And only then they realized they had made a huge mistake. They had no chance against the hero and his power. Kim Do-hyung didn't understand anything. It couldn't be. He couldn't believe the hero was stronger, so he rushed at him again. Kim was ready. He simply waited for him to come closer. Then he met him with a brutal ooder to the stomach. Kim Do-hyung fell to the ground, and the main hero struck again. He didn't want to kill him immediately, so first he cut off the man's arm. It hurt, and he realized he had chosen the wrong path. Kim just stood there, watching his enemy bleed out. It seemed he was waiting for Kim Do-hyung to say something, and he started begging for mercy. But it was too late. Kim wanted Kim Do-hyung to apologize to those he had killed, but the man refused. He didn't want to do it. Then the hero was done waiting. He killed him, brutally and coldly, and received half of his experience and strength. His girlfriend understood she was next and tried to opravdati herself. She said Kim Do-hyung threatened her and forced her to do things she never wanted to do. Her words made Yu Jung-gyu stop. He hesitated, and the woman kept apologizing to him. But she didn't know it wouldn't help. Kim didn't believe her and killed her too. He didn't feel sorry for her because he knew what she was like from the start. He also noticed how nervous Yu Jung-gyu was. He yelled at him for stopping and not finishing her. He had to pull himself together, because next time, he could prosta die. Yu Jung-gyu became upset immediately, but there was still one man who had managed to escape, and at that moment, the hero wanted to find him. It turned out the man from the enemy team had run away from the very beginning. He wasn't going to give up. He was sure he could pridumity a plan and defeat him. The criminal wanted revenge for his team and dead comrades. Suddenly, he heard a strange sound behind him, and he saw a giant monster in front of him. He had no chance to defeat it, so he was going to run. But suddenly, monster blood splashed onto his face, and he realized the monster had been cut in half, into 2 equal parts. But who could be so strong that they dealt with it that easily? And when he was about to step back, he stopped, because he saw it was the main hero, who had found him. Kim wasn't going to let the man go again. He wanted to end it once and for all. His gaze was determined, and he looked extremely dangerous. The man immediately began begging for forgiveness and asked to be spared. He claimed he could change and was ready to join his team. But the hero didn't let him finish. He killed him, brutally and coldly, the same way the criminal had done it to others. After that, he returned to Yu Jung-gyu, but he noticed the hero's face looked sad. It was because of the people who died, and he regretted that it happened. Right away, he started collecting the looted coins. But Yu Jung-gyu didn't want to do it. Kim insisted again and handed him the money, because if they didn't take it, someone else would. They had to survive and pass this difficult stage at any cost. The news that the strongest criminal team had been killed spread quickly. Everyone knew the main hero, and Yu Jung-gyu did it alone and managed to take revenge. But as the number of people grew smaller, most became very scared, because winning was now harder. At that time, the main hero joined a conversation with one of the teams, because he believed this gap could be closed quickly. Even the 20,000 points separating them wasn't that huge of a difference. But how could they gain points so fast? In reality, it was much simpler than they thought. They just had to keep fighting and killing monsters, and the main hero promised to handle the rest. The men continued killing monsters and building their individual points. But what did Kim mean when he said they could do it themselves? Yu Jung-gyu couldn't understand his plan, especially since they had been hunting for more than 10 hours. They needed rest, because they were trying to catch up to their rivals and win even by a small margin. So they left the room and planned to return to the hall with the others. Meanwhile, the 4th stage ended. It was the last day of this stage. Soon, the results would appear. Everyone waited impatiently and hoped their team would win and make it into the top. It became known that only 10 people would survive, so most of those who took part in the training would die. Kim did everything he could, so he tried to stay calm. After all, he had killed the Golden Goblin and wiped out the enemy team. Now, all that remained was to win the team competition and take a prize spot by points. Suddenly, a message appeared saying that at that moment, the points for each team were being calculated. The main hero took first place in individual points. Yu Jung-gyu was in second place, right after him. But all the opponents' team points were equal. And everything happened exactly the way Kim wanted, because no one died, and everyone received a notification that they had advanced to the next stage. People started rejoicing. It seemed his plan had worked. Because there were no losers, everyone won. The crowd immediately began cheering, because everyone managed to survive and escape. And they did it. Suddenly, strange things started happening to the people, and many of them simply began to disappear. The same thing was happening to them. Yu Jung-gyu panicked, but the main hero promised that they would meet again soon, and he vanished. The 4th stage of training was over. In addition, Kim's team achieved the best result in team points, and for that, he received a reward. He also found himself in an unknown place and couldn't understand what was happening to him. All his stats increased by 4 points. His effort hadn't been in vain. On top of that, he received many coins, and from that moment on, he could spend them on items for himself. In total, he had 162 gold coins. A terminal appeared in front of him. It was something that allowed him to spend money and buy various things for himself. However, there was nothing valuable there, only items he already had. But his attention was drawn to skills that could also be purchased. One of them was especially interesting and caught his eye. And that skill might have been connected to his bracelet, because they had the same names, and it seemed like they complemented each other. so the hero didn't hesitate and chose it. Besides, the skill was genuinely good and it could be upgraded. He bought the skill and then began learning it. Immediately, strange things started happening to his body, and he felt a weird warmth. Also, another bracelet appeared on his left hand. He examined it and realized it was the same as his old one. From that moment, his 5th stage of training was supposed to begin. The reward for the next stage would also be determined after it ended. He also knew the next level would be very difficult, even for him. Suddenly, huge doors appeared in front of him. They were meant to lead him to the next level, and without hesitation, he stepped through. It was hard to imagine what awaited him ahead. He was breathing heavily. There was no way back, so he had to keep fighting. He didn't care what monsters would be ahead. He was ready to do anything just to see his family at least once. After some time, he ended up in a new place. Other people approached him too, surprised by his sudden appearance, because the guy appeared in the middle of a medieval castle. At that moment, a battle was going on, and many soldiers were trying to defend the castle from enemies. They also asked him for help, because they couldn't handle the enemy army on their own. Then the hero remembered that this was exactly what had been written in his diary. Because in front of him he saw a massive army of the dead that wouldn't stop for anything. They wanted to break through and kill everyone inside the castle. That was exactly what the main hero had to do. It was his mission. People tried to hold the gates shut to keep the dead from breaking in. But there were so many that the people simply had no strength left. Besides, the dead didn't feel fatigue or pain. They had no fear. Suddenly, a sword flew into the skull of a skeleton that had almost squeezed through the gap. It was the main hero, ready to accept the fight. At that moment, he ran toward the dead, planning to fight an entire army by himself. Right away, he began killing them by the dozens. It was hard, but he didn't stop. Many enemies died, and he managed to buy a bit of time, because the people were able to close the gates and prepare better. Suddenly, one of the skeletons managed to get close and grabbed his armor. After its touch, things began to melt and burn. Kim killed it, but he realized he couldn't let them get too close, because their bodies were made of poison. But they were very slow and weak, and if he stayed careful, he could defeat them easily. He also understood that the monsters might fear sunlight, so he just needed to hold out a little longer. And he managed to do it. And when the sun rose, the monsters began to disappear. They burned under its rays, and that was the only truly effective weapon against them. After the battle, an unknown warrior approached him. It was Max, and he was responsible for the defense. The man thanked the main hero for his help because without him, the dead would have taken the castle. He also couldn't understand who Kim was or where he had appeared from so suddenly. But the hero didn't want to talk about it and promised he wouldn't cause problems in the castle. Max agreed and allowed him to stay because he needed skilled warriors like Kim. He also had a request for the main hero. He explained that the castle had been attacked by the dead for more than 10 days, and they kept resurrecting and returning in even greater numbers. People only knew they disappeared at dawn and were terrified of light. Where they came from and why they wanted to capture the castle, no one knew. But they only needed to hold out for 10 days because reinforcements were supposed to arrive then. But the hero understood that surviving 10 days against an army was far too easy. He knew this wasn't the whole story. Max asked him for help because he understood they couldn't manage against the dead alone. In return, he promised to reward him generously. But suddenly, the hero stood up and walked out. Before starting the new task, he had something to take care of. Very soon, evening came. And the dead approached the castle again. This time, there were far more of them. Max tried to figure out where the main hero had gone, but he was nowhere to be found. For a moment, it seemed like the guy had simply run away because he was scared. But they had to fight. He gave orders to his warriors to prepare and take their positions. Suddenly, one of the archers pointed down, straight at the enemy army, because he saw someone fighting the dead all alone. It was the main hero, one of the first to charge into battle, trying to win. He was highly focused, making sure the dead couldn't get close to him. However, there were too many, and he decided to retreat to recover his strength inside the castle. But it still wasn't over, because the dead began to break through. They tried to smash the doors so people had to hold them. Suddenly, Max managed to find him. He shouted at the hero for fighting them alone. But Kim had discovered the real reason they kept appearing, because he found a group of shamans hiding in the forest, summoning waves of the dead every night. So, the people and the bravest warriors went to hunt them down, planning to punish the criminals. However, the main hero wanted to go alone because he believed he had enough strength to deal with the enemies. Because he knew it was training and anything could happen, so he didn't know whether he could protect the people walking beside him. After some time, they managed to reach the place. They captured the shamans, but they said nothing and didn't confess to their crimes. That only brought their deaths closer, because Max and his soldiers grew furious. But the other shamans were confident the soldiers wouldn't be able to stop them, because it was soon going to get dark. and with darkness, they felt completely different. Suddenly, the main hero struck, hitting Pramo into the center of their sacred circle. The ground beneath their feet began to crack. Then the shaman realized Kim wasn't an ordinary soldier, and he wanted to take Kim's power for himself. For that, they needed to hurry. They started chanting spells, trying to summon monsters to help them. At the same time, the soldiers rushed in, trying to kill the mages. But could the mages summon the dead even when the sun was up? The main hero had a very bad feeling. He sensed something ujasni was about to happen. The shamans covered themselves with a Zashitni dome, but the guy managed to break through it. Soldiers tried to rush through the gap, thirsty for blood and revenge. But suddenly they felt sick and could no longer control their own power. The shamans had managed to invade their minds. Kim tried to do everything possible to save the soldiers' lives and ordered them to retreat, but it was too late. Because a strange creature appeared right in front of them, summoned by the shamans. It was a real demon, and it began devouring the people trapped there, unable to move. The hero had never seen anything like it before. Was this really his training? It was extremely hard to resist, when suddenly he saw strange shadows in the forest. But the scariest thing was above. The monster that appeared could speak to the shamans and listen to them. They gave an order. The monster's target was the main hero. And then the demon became enraged. It almost crushed its own master, because it didn't consider him a worthy opponent. The monster didn't let him finish speaking and simply crushed him. The soldiers were terrified, because the monster truly was strashny and dangerous. It was gigantic, had wings and deadly sharp weapons. The hero wanted to fight it one-on-one, while the others dealt with the mages. Max didn't want to leave him, but he knew they had no chance. The demon mocked the boy, because it didn't believe he could be a real rival. But the hero didn't give up. He was ready for perhaps the hardest duel of his life. The minutes before the fight were the hardest of his life. He didn't feel fear, but he tried to find the weak points in its body. But it was truly a very dangerous creature. He hoped that, using all his strength, he could split it in half with a single strike, because he had done that before to an orc and other creatures. But the demon was much stronger, and it might not be that simple. He had to wait, but the demon was already running at him. The boy managed to dodge a powerful attack, because it was as if it teleported toward him. It was incredibly fast. Another strike. But the boy managed to save himself this time too. At the last moment, he dodged again and realized there was no time left to hesitate. So, gathering all his strength, he struck, because he had to win before the sun set. Still, he managed to cut off its arm, and it worked, because he realized the demon could be wounded, especially since he hadn't been striking with full power. Suddenly, the demon stopped. It noticed his bracelets, and then it understood that the boy truly wasn't an ordinary human. And then the hero started mocking it as well. Suddenly, another blow. This time, Kim didn't manage to dodge and felt the full force of its strength. Was this the end? The people who saw it began to scream, but the main hero stayed on his feet. His hands were shaking because he was using all his strength just to resist. The demon couldn't understand why he was so strong, and it kept pressing with all the power it had. Suddenly, the boy's sword started to fail him because countless cracks appeared on it. In the end, it couldn't withstand it and slipped from his grip. But at the last moment, he jumped back. This time he got incredibly lucky. Again. But his weapon was broken, and he was almost defenseless. Kim was prepared. He always carried another sword with him, and he was going to use it. Suddenly, the demon was already behind him. It was truly fast, despite its size. The hero didn't expect it at all, but at the last moment he managed to block. Still, the Uter was so strong that he was thrown several meters away. When the boy stopped, he tried to continue fighting, but he was exhausted, and his body began to ache. But the demon, despite the wound, remained incredibly strong and was ready to tear him apart. It seemed the demon had spent all its sile and could no longer use its power or teleport so quickly. That was exactly what the boy had been waiting for, and he immediately charged at it. The decisive moment of the battle had come. The demon tried to stop him, but it failed. And again the hero managed to dodge. Putting all his strength into it, he cut off another limb. But he wasn't going to stop there. He wanted to keep fighting, using the moment while the demon was weakened. Another strike, but now he aimed. The blow had to be precise and powerful, straight to the throat, and when he waited for that moment, he wanted to vlojiti every last bit of strength he still had. The demon tried to resist. It tried to throw the boy off, but the hero waited. He kept waiting for the right moment to attack, and he waited for the demon to expose its neck. And then it happened. He was ready, and he struck. The blow was incredibly powerful, and with a single swing of his sword, Kim cut off the monster's head. It was over, and he was glad he managed to do it before night fell. The boy won again. But it seemed the demon was still breathing. Even without a head, it could still move. But it quickly passed, and its body fell to the ground. The boy exhaled with relief because he knew that this time he had been one step from death. Immediately, his new friends ran up to him, having watched the battle from a safe distance. The soldiers would never have been able to win without him, so they were grateful. However, the hero understood it was pure luck, because if it had been night, none of them would have survived. Suddenly, the demon's severed head began to speak. It mocked the boy and the soldiers, but it admitted defeat. Kim wanted to put an end to it, so he finished it off by driving his sword into its eye. After that, he received a notification that his training had been completed. The hero gained a huge amount of experience and strength. Max said that the demon he had defeated was the god of death, and it could command an army of the dead. Then the boy realized that after the training ended, he would have to fight it again. But then the demon would be far stronger than it was now. Max didn't want to zadерживate the main hero and was going to repay him for helping them win the war. But the boy refused. He simply thanked him and left. At this stage, he planned to enter the same doors that had appeared in front of him and move on to a new, much harder stage of his training. He hoped that behind those doors, his beloved wife and daughter would be waiting for him. More than anything in the world, he wanted to meet them again. However, the place he ended up in was covered in fog. Because of that, he couldn't see anything and moved blindly. Suddenly, he saw a strange structure in front of him. Most likely, that was where he needed to go, so he went. On the way, he met a strange man who asked who he was and how he had managed to find this place. The stranger looked like a god. He wore unusual clothing and was of gigantic height. He also recognized the item on the boy's arm, because long ago, it had belonged to him, until he himself had lost it. The man also knew why the boy had come to him. Kim wanted to find the king, and the man was his vassal. The boy said he had gotten lost in the thick fog until he saw the temple and decided to enter. Besides, the man didn't think the boy could be lying, so he believed him. But he zadumavся. His eyes filled with fear. He looked up at the sky, as if he had heard someone, because he began speaking to his king. The king seemed to like the main hero. Kim could receive great power from him, but it would be very hard to control. It could become not a gift, but a punishment. Moreover, anyone who possessed such power carried an ogromna responsibility. The boy zadumavся. But at the same time, he immediately agreed. He didn't understand how powerful that strength could be, but he knew he needed it. And it was only for one reason, so that he could meet the people he loved so much, and for them, he was ready for anything. It seemed the man understood him, but suddenly he touched him, because he didn't want to let him go so easily or hand over such tremendous power. He had to understand the price that the one who possessed it would have to pay, and only the one who could endure it would be able to claim it and become unbeatable. Suddenly, the boy began to feel unbearable pain and couldn't stay on his feet. The pain was meant to be smrtelnim, and everything was only beginning. He had to do everything possible to endure it and survive, and he tried. Tears streamed from his eyes, but he endured. The boy tried to get up, but he couldn't. From the silny pain, he lost consciousness and couldn't rise. The man began to doubt that he would be able to endure it. But then the boy came to his senses and tried to get up. The man watched silently and didn't vmешиваться. The boy crawled. He kept resisting, but the pain didn't fade. Blood poured from his mouth. He was bleeding heavily. He was incredibly stubborn and ready to do anything to obtain that power. He wasn't going to give up, because it was his only chance to meet his family again. However, he realized he couldn't endure it any longer, and wanted them to just kill him, because it was unbearable. Suddenly, he heard a voice. The voice was very familiar. A ghost repeated the reason he had to keep fighting and survive, but he didn't listen. His eyes began to close. It seemed like he was dying. Suddenly, he saw his wife and daughter in front of him. He didn't want to leave them and tried to reach them, but they moved farther away. Kim understood he couldn't give up so easily because he had promised to meet them again. Immediately, he managed to calm down. The pain passed and he felt much better. Besides, he hadn't died, and he couldn't understand how he had managed to see his wife because it was thanks to her that he stayed alive. Inside his body was the king's heart, even though he was an ordinary boy who had sluchajno entered their world. The king's heart was the reward for his training, yet the main hero felt that it wasn't that simple. Who was that king really? He had so many questions. The man was going to answer him, if he could. The boy asked who the king truly was, the one they had told him about. But the man couldn't give him an answer. And when Kim asked again, he stopped him, because time was up, and the boy had to leave that world. Also, he had to take with him the gifts the king had left. After a while, he simply disappeared. The man understood that the king believed in the boy's strength, because he wasn't like the others. There was something special in him. The boy gained a lot of training experience and new items, and immediately found himself in a new and unfamiliar place. There were many foreigners among the people, and he couldn't understand what they were saying to each other. Suddenly he heard a familiar voice. It was Yu Jung-gyu, who was overjoyed to see him and rushed in for a hug. Then people in armor approached them. They looked like soldiers. But why had everyone been moved to one place, and why couldn't they get out, since they were surrounded by a wall? Suddenly the guard's voice made them fall silent, and everyone stopped talking.